How long have you been working here, yet you're still sweeping the floor? CEO Amelia Cross's voice was arctic, cutting through the empty hallway as she swept past the janitor, stooping near her daughter's classroom door. The entire corridor that seemed to hold its breath. He didn't answer. He simply picked up a discarded student notebook, carefully dusted the cover, and placed it back on the desk in Theon. From the classroom, Amelia's daughter, Emma, looked up and smiled widely. "Mr. Daniel, I remembered yesterday's lesson. Thank you." Amelia froze. The man she had just publicly humiliated was the very person secretly tutoring her child every night. He turned, the fluorescent light catching the chalk dust on his uniform. A handwritten sign remained on the chalkboard. "Not everyone who teaches needs a name tag, just a heart." Daniel Hart, 36, was a single father defined by quiet resilience and an old-school belief in profound ethical standards. Before the collapse, he had been recognized as one of Boston's finest mathematics educators. His classroom was a place of intellectual challenge, but it was also a sanctuary where fear of failure was systematically dismantled. Daniel's teaching philosophy was simple, yet radical. Every equation had a real-world meaning, and every student deserved to find their place in the formula. He didn't focus on what they got wrong, but how they reasoned incorrectly, guiding them gently back to the logical track. His fame was built not on high standardized test scores, which he openly distrusted as measures of teaching quality, but on his ability to transform intimidated students into curious thinkers. He didn't just teach the answers, he taught the deep, satisfying reason why the answers existed, often using music theory or architecture as analogies for complex concepts. His downfall had been a single, morally pure act 3 years prior. He had passionately defended a gifted student from a low-income background who was tragically excluded from a crucial scholarship examination. The reason? The family couldn't afford a recently mandated supplementary technology fee of $500. Daniel, witnessing this blatant commodification of potential, refused to stay silent. He challenged the school board publicly, his words echoing in the city council chambers and across local news platforms. Education is not a commodity to be sold. It is a human right that defines our future. When we sell access, we sell potential, and we betray the foundational promise of democracy. The incident was seismic. The school faced lawsuits from outraged local parents, and Daniel, the inconvenient truth-teller, was quickly designated the scapegoat. His reputation was savaged by the powerful network of high-net-worth donors he had offended. His license was swiftly suspended on fabricated charges of professional misconduct, and his career in education was terminated overnight. The message was clear: conform or be erased. The tragedy compounded when his wife, Sarah, a beloved elementary art teacher and his lifelong creative partner, succumbed to an aggressive form of cancer shortly after. Daniel was left alone with their 8-year-old daughter, Mia. He had lost his career, his artistic anchor, and his entire professional identity. To keep Mia enrolled at Lane Academy, Amelia Cross's elite flagship school, where Mia held a rare talent scholarship based on her mother's reputation, Daniel accepted the graveyard shift as a janitor. It was a brutal irony. He cleaned the halls of the very system that had exiled him. He worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., ensuring he was home when Mia woke, sacrificing sleep to maintain a facade of normalcy for his daughter. Despite his grueling schedule, his inner educator never retired. As he pushed his cart, he used the quiet, empty rooms as his new classroom for Mia. He taught her geometry using shadows and light cast by the hallway fixtures. He explained physics using the mechanics of his heavy mop bucket and the momentum of his cart. And he practiced algebra using chalk, always careful to carry the small, inscribed piece Mia had given him. A white shard etched with M&D, standing for Mia, Ba, and Dad. A talisman reminding him of his singular, unwavering mission, to protect his daughter's education and spirit. Amelia Cross, 30, the iron-willed CEO of Cross Global Education, was the antithesis of Daniel. She viewed education as a meticulously optimized financial product. Her life was an endless loop of efficiency reports, M&A strategy, maximizing profit margins, and minimizing organizational friction. Her suits were tailored, her schedule was automated, and her belief in the marketplace was absolute. Her daughter, Emma, was her only weak point. the one area she couldn't control. Emma, also 8, was brilliant in every subject except math. She didn't fear the numbers themselves. She feared the relentless pressure of performance that Amelia placed upon her, having been cycled through 6 different, highly paid tutors. These experts, all boasting PhDs and specialized certifications, focused solely on Amelia's demands for measurable progress in high-stakes test readiness. Their pressure had only cemented Emma's fear, driving her math anxiety to a crippling peak, making her stomach clench at the sight of a fraction. The pivotal moment arrived on a rainy Tuesday. Amelia was trapped in a late-night conference call about optimizing enrollment projections for the next quarter. Emma, having finished her required, suffocating study hour in a plush, expensive study room, sat motionless, tears blurring the numbers on her homework sheet. She was not crying loudly. She was crying defeatedly, silently mourning her inability to be the perfect student her mother demanded. Daniel, tidying the adjacent hallway, noticed the tiny, soundless sorrow. He quietly entered the room, his presence a calm shadow. He didn't offer sympathy, he offered a distraction. He pulled out a used cardboard box, destined for recycling, and meticulously cut out 12 equal pentagons with his utility knife. "These are the foundations of the universe," he told her, his voice low and comforting, devoid of any academic pressure. "They're not a math problem. They're a puzzle." He taught her the concept of polyhedrons, showing her how simple, flat shapes combine through geometry into majestic, stable structures. In 20 minutes, Emma was laughing, forgetting the pressure, engrossed in creation, the fear melting away as she saw the physical beauty of math. From then on, Emma deliberately fabricated excuses to stay an extra half hour, always ensuring Daniel was still on duty. "I need to reorganize my pencil case," or "I lost my flashcards, Mr. Daniel can help me find them." Daniel, oblivious to Amelia's high-power identity, saw only a lonely, neglected child, a mirror image of his own daughter, starved for a human connection that transcended curriculum. He was driven by pure empathy and the ingrained desire to educate, his heart guided by the silent motto written on his chalk, M&D. The change in Emma was spectacular and undeniable. Her math anxiety vanished, replaced by a confident eagerness to learn. Her grades surged, not through rote memorization, but because she finally grasped the underlying logic and could explain the why. She talked about math like it was an adventure, a language she had finally mastered. Amelia, analyzing her daughter's sudden dramatic shift, moved from detached satisfaction to corporate curiosity. She reviewed the invoices for the tutors. All 6 had been fired. She remembered the 6 profiles. Dr. Eleanor Vance, specializing in anxiety-driven learning, charging $500 an hour. Professor Sterling, a retired MIT academic, charging double that. All failed. Now Emma was thriving, and Amelia had no expense recorded. "Tell me again, Emma," Amelia probed one night, her tone careful, attempting to apply professional investigation techniques to her child. "Who taught you that incredible trick for solving simultaneous equations? The one about balancing the 2 sides." Emma beamed, holding up a crude yet functional balance made from a coat hanger Daniel had helped her construct. "Mr. Daniel, Mom, the one who cleans the big gym. He said the equations were just trying to be fair to each other." Amelia's professional skepticism collided violently with her maternal relief. She initially dismissed it as a child's imagination. But when she received confirmation from Emma's homeroom teacher, a nervous, apologetic email praising Mr. Hart's incredible pedagogical talent, despite his non-official capacity, especially his work with visual learners, Amelia snapped. "The janitor is paid to sanitize, not to tutor." She fumed to her executive assistant, her voice tight with corporate command. "He is unauthorized personnel interfering with a 7-figure education program, undermining our entire value proposition. This is an enormous liability." That night, Amelia drove back, cold anger simmering, mixed with a fearful acknowledgement that this unauthorized janitor had succeeded where her millions had failed. She walked the silent halls, confronting Daniel at the classroom door, the moment that shattered their carefully maintained separation, captured in the hook. After the humiliation and the sudden realization that this man was her daughter's savior, Amelia's initial rage morphed into a desperate, corporate panic. He was a security risk, a liability, an uncontrolled, untraceable variable in her highly controlled life. She spent the entire night researching. The next morning, the detailed HR report on Daniel Hart, night custodian, landed on her desk. She didn't just read the summary, she delved into the appendices. She read the damning internal memos from his previous school board, the biased testimony from the donors he offended, and the precise details of the student he defended, a young boy who was slated to be the first in his family to attend Caltech. The report confirmed the truth. Daniel wasn't a failure, he was an ethical refugee. As she read the devastating account of his ethical stand, his forced resignation, and the relentless character assassination he suffered, Amelia felt the foundation of her profit-driven career shake. He wasn't just a teacher, he was a living testament to the ethical failure of commercialized education, a failure that she was currently championing. She found Daniel during his afternoon break, deep in the maintenance cavern, a subterranean world smelling of bleach, industrial cleaner, and motor oil. He was skillfully repairing a faulty air conditioning unit's circuit board, the precise, almost surgical work of his hands reflecting the sharp acuity of his mind. Mia sat beside him on an upturned bucket, patiently sounding out words from a worn children's book, the shared activity, a testament to their unbreakable bond. Amelia stood in the doorway, framed against the fluorescent hallway light, the harsh glow illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. "You were the teacher of fairness," she said, the name a ghost of his past, resurrected by her investigation. Daniel continued twisting a wire, his movements unhurried, treating the delicate circuit board with the same focus he'd applied to a math proof. "The name belongs to the man I used to be, Ms. Cross. He went out of business when I discovered that fairness is a cost that most institutions are unwilling to pay. Why not return to teaching? You could easily tutor privately and charge more than my entire staff. You clearly possess extraordinary skill." Daniel finally turned, his gaze leveling on the CEO, completely unawed by her wealth and power. "I can't teach in a system where I have to look a child in the eyes and tell them that their potential is only worth what their parents can pay. I used to think education was the cure for inequality. Now I see it's often just a symptom, a financial gatekeeper. I'll settle for cleaning up the mess it leaves behind, because at least the job is honest." His words, delivered without malice or self-pity, were devastatingly accurate, forcing Amelia to confront the cold truth of her business model. Amelia's eyes fell upon the workbench. Daniel's latest creations were laid out, complex parabolic arcs folded from discarded paper coffee filters, in a meticulous three-dimensional representation of the Fibonacci sequence, constructed from reclaimed cardboard spacers and adhesive tape. They were masterpieces of resourcefulness, creations born of genuine passion and necessity, not budget or prestige. Amelia retreated, her boardroom armor cracking under the weight of his quiet, ethical integrity. At home, she found Emma completing a difficult geometry problem, not with tears but with a happy concentration she hadn't seen before. "Mr. Daniel says if I can build it with my hands, I can understand it in my head," Emma explained, holding up a small, folded paper model of an octahedron, stable and perfect. Amelia looked at the model and then at her own life, the millions she spent on perfection, all failing to achieve what a janitor with paper towels and cardboard had done in 20 minutes. That night, she didn't just look at the old, dusty mission statement of Cross Global. She contacted the lawyers who had handled Daniel's original case, seeking the truth about the financial pressures that had crushed him. The deeper she dug, the more she realized her own company, while perhaps not as cruel, operated on the same cold, profitable principles. Access equals profit. She found the small, childish gift Emma had pressed into Daniel's hand, a crayon drawing, now framed in the maintenance room's tiny office, depicting the two of them standing by a board with the script, "Sharing makes strong." Amelia realized the most valuable lesson being taught wasn't to Emma, but to the CEO who needed to learn how to share control and, crucially, share humanity, accepting that true value lies outside the profit column. The ensuing media firestorm was swift and catastrophic. The highly influential donor, Mr. Thorne, escalated the situation by not only revealing the janitor tutor, but by implying that Cross Global was dangerously incompetent, exposing Emma's initial struggles as proof of the school's failure to deliver its promised results. News sites ran screaming headlines: Broom Tutor Scandal, the CEO's secret teacher, and Lane and Acadity's luxury lie. Tutors fail, janitor saves the day. The narrative painted Daniel as a rogue, unlicensed employee and Amelia as a negligent, out-of-touch mother whose priorities were purely financial. The Cross Global Board of Directors called a tense, mandatory meeting in the glass-walled headquarters. The atmosphere was poisonous, thick with fear of financial damage and shareholder lawsuits. Amelia, you have crossed a definitive line, Mr. Thorne, the largest shareholder, declared, his voice tight with controlled fury, leaning across the massive polished mahogany table. Our brand is built on exclusivity, measurable returns, and total control over the learning environment. This man, this custodian, represents the antithesis of our value proposition. He is the image of failure, of charity, of everything we are not. You must terminate Daniel Hart immediately. Issue a statement about unauthorized personnel access and bury the story with an iron fist. The CFO, sweating under the pressure, backed Thorne. The stock dropped 3 points in pre-market trading, Amelia. We are hemorrhaging value. We need to be ruthless. You defend him, and you will lose the board's confidence. You will lose your CEO position. You cannot afford to prioritize sentiment over $1 billion empire. Fiduciary duty dictates that he must go. Amelia listened, the arguments logical, brutal, and entirely correct from a corporate perspective. Every word was a calculated strike against her heart. But all she could see was the memory of Daniel's quiet dignity and Emma's radiant, confident smile, a smile she hadn't bought but which Daniel had earned. Daniel, anticipating the corporate execution he knew was coming, didn't wait. He composed a brief, heartfelt resignation letter, carefully leaving out any trace of resentment or self-pity. Ms. Cross, he wrote, the pen steady in his hand, I am resigning immediately. My actions, though driven by a desire to help your daughter find her voice, have unintentionally caused distress and controversy to the Academy. I cannot allow my personal history, however unfairly judged, to damage your professional integrity or Emma's peace of mind. I wish you and your daughter only the best. Thank you for the chance to sweep the halls. It was meaningful work. He was collecting his final items, the inscribed chalk piece, the small frame with Emma's drawing, when Amelia intercepted him near the loading dock, the back entrance where the trash was collected. She looked pale, her expensive suit seemed heavy and suffocating, and the usual corporate sheen had faded from her eyes. She offered no defense, only quiet, raw contrition. I'm sorry, Daniel, she murmured, finally meeting his eye, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry for the words I used. I'm sorry for the system I run. I failed you 3 years ago by allowing it to exist, and I almost failed her now by trying to control her success. He gave her a gentle nod, accepting her apology but not demanding anything in return. It's not your failure alone, Amelia. It's the failure of the marketplace when it tries to value the things that are truly invaluable. Some messes require more than a broom. They require the harsh light of truth to clean up the foundation. He placed the folded resignation letter on his cart and walked out into the early morning light, disappearing into the city like a quiet, moral ghost, leaving only the scent of pine cleaner and honesty behind. The next day, Emma's despair was palpable. She refused to go into the classroom, weeping uncontrollably on the steps, clutching a small, worn piece of the cardboard polyhedron. She demanded her friend and teacher be brought back. Amelia tried everything, promises of new tutors, gifts of expensive toys, even stern threats, but Emma was inconsolable. Later that afternoon, Amelia found her daughter in her room, hunched over her small personal chalkboard, usually reserved for lists of friends and silly drawings. Emma had scrawled a defiant quote, the summation of Daniel's ethos, the words wet with tears, math is just love with logic and my logic is gone. Amelia sank onto the floor, realizing the depth of the void Daniel's departure had created. He hadn't just taught a curriculum, He had restored her daughter's self-worth, and now that vital connection was severed. The corporate pressure was immense. The board had scheduled an emergency vote for Amelia's termination that evening, certain she would not fight for her career. She knew she had one last play, one final chance to choose who she was, a ruthless CEO beholden to profit margins, or Emma's mother and a steward of moral integrity. She didn't attend the emergency meeting. Instead, she arrived unannounced at the massive televised press conference, waiting outside the school gates, standing before dozens of cameras, flashbulbs blinding, microphones thrust into her face. The silence of the crowd was heavy with anticipation. Amelia, standing tall and unwavering in her tailored suit, didn't hedge or apologize for Daniel. She took full corporate responsibility for the company's blindness and ethical complacency. If the reputation of global education forces us to be ashamed of learning from a man whose integrity is higher than our stock price, then that reputation is worthless, she announced, her voice resonating with a power and authenticity she had never accessed in the sterile boardroom. We have been selling exclusion, not education. She then produced the full HR file, detailing Daniel's career and his ethical stand. She revealed the exact reason he was forced out of his previous job: protecting a financially disadvantaged student. This man, she said, holding the file up like a sacred text, was penalized for believing in the mission we preach but do not practice. He has taught me more about teaching than all the PhDs we've ever hired combined. The press corps was stunned into silence, the scandal instantly transforming into a story of corporate redemption. Amelia then announced her decision: the immediate reinstatement of Daniel Hart, not as a janitor but as the chief pedagogical officer for a new, fully funded nonprofit division called the Global Education Initiative for Access. She then introduced the after-hours class, a free open program for all struggling students in the district, funded entirely by Global and led by Daniel. We will prove that a great education does not belong to the richest, but to the most dedicated. Mr. Hart taught my daughter the most important lesson of all. Humility is the foundation of true learning. We are rebuilding our foundation, starting tonight, with him and his dedication. The board's decision became irrelevant. Amelia had won the moral ground, turning the company's financial liability into its greatest ethical asset. The story instantly shifted from a scandal to the humanitarian turning point in global education. In Daniel's old, empty maintenance closet, Amelia found a final note from Emma, slipped under the door after his departure, written in shaky handwriting. "Don't stop teaching, Daddy. Love, Mia." Amelia realized Emma and Mia had bonded deeply over the same love for a selfless father and his quiet dedication. This note was the final push. She was fighting not just for Daniel, but for Mia, for Emma, and for the legacy of the man who flew under the radar and changed everything. Daniel, deeply moved by Amelia's public stand and professionally validated in the most profound way, accepted the new role as chief pedagogical officer on his own stringent terms. He insisted on a modest salary, enough to live comfortably but not extravagantly, no suit, and absolutely no executive office. His domain remained the students, and his preferred title was simply Mr. Daniel Teacher. He believed the title should reflect his function, not his hierarchy. The after-hours class was launched with immediate, resounding success. It was housed in the old, expansive library wing, now converted into a vibrant, multidisciplinary learning lab. The initial resistance from some elite parents who felt their tuition dollars were being diluted by association with a nonprofit venture was quickly silenced by the program's undeniable results and the sheer magnetism of Daniel's teaching. The children who attended were not just getting smarter, they were happier, more engaged, and less stressed. The class became a beacon of light and humanity within the corporate structure of Lane Academy. Daniel was relentless in his pursuit of genuine understanding over sterile achievement. He eliminated all standardized testing in his class, replacing it with mastery projects and concept clinics. Hands-on tasks that required students to apply concepts in real-world scenarios, not just memorize formulas. He paired high-achieving students with struggling ones, establishing a peer mentorship ladder that fostered a culture of mutual responsibility. a stark contrast to the cutthroat competitive environment Amelia's former regime had cultivated. The fastest way to learn something, Daniel often told the students, is to teach it to someone who needs it more than you do. When you mentor, you cement your own foundation. Emma and Mia were his constant happy shadows, now elevated to junior curriculum assistants. They collected the supplies, helped organize the recycled paper models, and most importantly, offered peer empathy and comfort to the newest, most anxious students. Their shared connection had blossomed into a rare friendship. One chilly evening, Amelia came to the classroom after a taxing board meeting that had now shifted its focus from profit to purpose. She found Daniel deep in concentration, working with a 15-year-old boy named Leo, who was nonverbal and suffered from acute social anxiety, struggling with the concept of exponential growth, a concept often taught abstractly. Daniel wasn't speaking to him directly. He had created a large, intricate, tactile display using dozens of small, polished wooden cubes, representing growth from 2, one layer, to 22, a square, then 23, a cube, and so on, meticulously demonstrating the concept through volume and touch. He guided the student in his hands, letting him feel the explosion of volume as the base expanded. He used simple, rhythmic taps on the desk to demonstrate the accelerating beat of geometric increase. "You see it here," Daniel finally whispered, his voice quiet but profound, tailored to the student's silent world. "The world doesn't grow in a straight line. It accelerates. It doubles. Feel that power, that speed. Math isn't rigid, it's alive, and it gets bigger, faster than you can count." Amelia was utterly spellbound. It wasn't just pedagogy, it was profound, individualized care and a tailored form of communication. This level of dedication was impossible to buy or mandate with a corporate memo or an expensive tutor. She waited until the class was empty before approaching him, her heart heavy with the weight of her old failures. "That student, Leo," she said, gesturing toward the cubes, "his file says he hasn't spoken a word in class for 3 years, paralyzing his academic career. You reached him with wood and silence, Daniel. How?" "I just gave him language he could understand, Amelia," Daniel responded, gently stacking the cubes away, his movements economical and precise. "His mind is brilliant, but he can't stand the noise and the expectation of the classroom. My job is to quiet the world so he can hear the numbers talk to him directly." "Aren't you exhausted?" she asked, genuinely concerned, realizing the sheer emotional and intellectual cost of his work. "You gave up everything to teach this way, and now you're doing it for an entire new system you created. It must cost you everything you have left." He looked at her, his eyes clear and resolute in the fading light. "I'm not paying the cost, Amelia. I'm paying a debt. A debt to the boy I failed 3 years ago, the one I couldn't save from the system. I am teaching myself how to trust the goodness of this mission again. You gave me the money, the platform, and the trust to do it. The cost was absolutely worth it." Amelia left him in the warm light of the classroom. As she drove, she realized Daniel was not just an exceptional educator. He was the ethical engine of her entire enterprise. He was the man who kept the polished floors of her corporate empire from becoming morally slick, the man who wiped the dust of ambition from the purity of purpose, and her most essential partner. She never used the term janitor again. She used his name, Daniel, or his title, Chief Pedagogical Officer, a title she had insisted be carved onto a new plaque for his door. She had the simple wood sign hung above the after-hours door, varnished and restored, a permanent fixture, after hours, where the lights never go out. The promise was about more than just the building. It was about the eternal, unquenchable soul of the school. A year and a half into the new program, the transformation was systemic and irreversible. Cross-global education, once criticized for its sterile exclusivity, was now lauded globally for its pioneering access and excellence model, all driven by Daniel's hands-on, empathetic philosophy. The after-hours program had expanded to 24 schools across the state, serving thousands of children who had previously been left behind. The company's brand, ironically, soared to new moral heights, proving that integrity could be the ultimate competitive advantage. Teacher morale skyrocketed, and the parent community, initially skeptical, had become the program's fiercest champions. Daniel Hart was officially nominated for the Presidential Medal for Educators, the nation's highest honor for a teacher. He politely but firmly declined the nomination. "I am incredibly honored," he stated in a brief public note, a sentence that was shared widely. But education does not need heroes on a podium. It needs honest, dedicated people in the classroom every day. My students are my only award, and their success is the only medal I require. His refusal only cemented his reputation as the genuine article, the teacher who valued impact over acclaim, a rare moral compass in a world obsessed with celebrity. Amelia came to see him privately in the empty after-hours classroom one last time before the summer break. The room was tidy, ready for the next day, the chalkboard freshly cleaned, bearing only a small, colorful geometric doodle. "You're the only person I know who refuses both a board chairmanship and the presidential medal," she joked lightly, a tone of warmth now common between them. "They are symbols of power, Amelia. I only care about the symbol of the heart," he replied, pointing to the familiar worn M&D etched into the chalk piece, now kept in a small, velvet-lined box on his desk. "This is the only charter I need." "You helped me find my goal again, Daniel. I am no longer just a CEO obsessed with market efficiency. I am the steward of a mission you defined. Thank you for showing me that leadership isn't about control, but about finding the right heart to guide the way." He smiled, a deep, genuine smile of shared triumph, the years of hardship visible but overcome. "I just wiped the dust off the old mirror so you could see your own purpose clearly again. We all need a good cleaning now and then." On the final day of the school year, Emma and Mia performed their second original play, written and directed by themselves, The Janitor Who Rebuilt the School. It was a massive, tear-jerking success, playing to a packed auditorium of cheering parents and teachers. At the emotional conclusion, Emma stepped forward, holding the small, weathered paper pizza model that Daniel had first used to teach her about geometry and fractions. She looked directly at her mother and Daniel, standing together side by side in the front row. She spoke the words that had started it all, words that had become the school's unofficial mantra, etched onto the very soul of the institution. "Not everyone who teaches needs a name tag, they just need a heart." The standing ovation was prolonged, emotional, and total, a genuine tribute to both the teacher and the woman who finally chose integrity over profit. After the crowd finally dispersed, Amelia found Daniel in the main corridor. He was, inevitably, sweeping the last of the celebratory confetti and streamers, a rainbow mess of joy. "Still sweeping, Daniel?" she asked, her voice amused and tender, completely devoid of the judgment of that first encounter. He paused, leaning on the broom, the golden light of the late afternoon casting long shadows across the gleaming floor, making the act of cleaning seem noble. "If I stop sweeping, Amelia, someone might slip and fall, and I can't risk anyone falling behind now. Not on these floors, and not in the classroom." And the light reflected off the small, perfect writing on the chalkboard in the corner of the classroom, the philosophical bedrock of their new venture. "Math is just love with logic." Daniel Hart, the single father, had proven that the true measure of a person is not the title they hold, but the quiet, dignified, and morally driven work they choose to do, hour after hour, year after year. He had returned to the one truth he knew: courage doesn't retire, it simply cleans up and starts teaching again, finding its classroom wherever a student is willing to listen. If you believe that the quiet actions of loving single fathers and the profound lessons taught by heart, not by book, deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to Hidden Heart Stories. We tell the stories of those heroes who should not be forgotten, the ones who teach in the shadows.